Revenge office stories. Some stories are modern-day myths. They get told and retold on internet forums, in office break rooms, and whispered about as warnings. They're stories about what happens when decades of loyalty are met with cold, corporate indifference. When a company stops seeing a person as a builder and starts seeing them as a line item on a budget. This is one of those stories. It's a fictional tale, the legend of Eleanor Vance and the Sterling Global Trust Bank. While the person, the company, and the event aren't real, the story has woven itself into corporate folklore because it's rooted in a powerful truth. You should never, ever underestimate the person who holds the keys. After 31 years of building a bank's entire digital fortress from scratch, they fired me. One single day before my retirement party. They handed me a cardboard box for my desk plants and had a security guard walk me out, all to save a few dollars on a pension I had earned 1,000 times over. They thought I was just an old architect they could easily replace with someone younger and cheaper. They didn't realize that for 3 decades, I wasn't just an employee. I was the only one with the keys, and they had just locked themselves out. My name is Eleanor Vance. For 31 years, my world was a place of logic and order. I was a senior systems architect at Sterling Global Trust, which is a fancy way of saying I was the master gardener of a digital ecosystem that moved $19 billion a day. The system wasn't just a program. It felt like a living thing I'd nurtured from its infancy. I called it the Citadel. It was built on a foundation of older, robust languages like COBOL, a workhorse that, believe it or not, still powers a huge chunk of the world's financial transactions. Over the decades, I layered modern code on top, weaving a complex tapestry that was both ancient and cutting edge. It was secure, efficient, and in 15 years, it hadn't suffered a single major outage. It was my life's work. I wasn't just a coder. I was an archaeologist of my own creation. I knew every secret passage, every forgotten line of code from 1998 that, if touched, would cause a catastrophic collapse. This knowledge wasn't written down in a manual. It lived in my head. It was the sum of 31 years of solving crises at 3 a.m. and choosing the right fix over the easy one. The culture at the bank used to reflect that stability. It was a place full of lifers who wore their 20 and 30-year service pins with pride. But a new wind had blown through the marble halls. A new chief technology officer, Davis Finch, was brought in. Finch was young, armed with an MBA, and spoke a language of buzzwords, not wisdom. He talked about disruption, synergy, and agile sprints. To him, the Citadel wasn't a marvel. It was a monolithic legacy system. He saw people like me not as assets, but as dinosaurs. He made no secret of his disdain. In meetings, he'd talk over me, simplifying my complex diagnoses with dismissive lines like, "Okay, boomer, let's circle back to the cloud solution." He brought in a team of young developers he called his A-team. They were brilliant, but they saw the Citadel as a relic to be dismantled, not a fortress to be understood. They couldn't read the old COBOL scripts, dismissing them as ancient hieroglyphs. My retirement was supposed to be a celebration. A grand farewell was planned. I'd spent months preparing meticulous documentation, a brain dump of everything I knew, trying to distill 3 decades of knowledge into something Finch's A-team could digest. I knew they probably wouldn't read it, but I had to try. For the good of the system. The day before my party, I was summoned to a sterile HR conference room. Davis Finch was there, along with an HR rep I'd never seen. "Eleanor," the rep began, reading from a script, "the bank is undergoing a significant strategic realignment." I just stared. Strategic realignment? I was retiring tomorrow. Finch chimed in, a smug little smirk on his lips. "We've decided to accelerate that transition. As of today, your position has been made redundant." The word just hung there. Redundant. After 31 years, I was redundant. "My retirement is tomorrow," I said, my voice a whisper. "The party's been cancelled," Finch said flatly. And by restructuring now, the company avoids certain legacy financial obligations. He was talking about my pension, my full vested pension. By firing me one day before my official retirement, they were trying to trigger some fine print clause to slash my payout. It was a breathtakingly cruel act of greed. Your personal effects are boxed up, the HR woman said. Security will escort you out. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stood up, a cold, quiet fury washing over me. As they walked me through the office, past the desks of people I'd mentored, I could feel their eyes on me. No one said a word. The family I thought I had was gone, replaced by strangers too scared to speak up. In the lobby, they handed me a single box with a desk fern, a few photos, and a mug that said, "World's Best Architect." They thought they had won. They thought they'd saved a little money. What they didn't know was that they hadn't just fired an employee. They had just pulled the keystone from the arch. The first 24 hours were surreal. I went home, made a cup of tea, and for the first time in 3 decades, did nothing related to Sterling Global Trust. The silence wasn't defeat, it was anticipation. I had built the Citadel to be resilient, and I had built it to be loyal, not to the executives, but to its own internal logic. Years ago, I designed a core security protocol called the Sentinel Protocol. It wasn't malware or a backdoor. It was an ethical safeguard, a digital dead man switch. It was designed to ensure that the transfer of the highest level architectural keys had to follow a specific process I called the retirement handshake. It was a cryptographic ceremony. If my credentials were ever revoked suddenly, without that proper sign-off, Sentinel would interpret it as a hostile takeover from within. It wouldn't delete data. It would just stop trusting. It would enter a state of cryptographic lockdown, freezing all outbound transaction processing until the handshake was properly completed. By me. Finch, of course, knew nothing about this. He assumed deactivating my account was like flipping a light switch. He had no idea he'd just triggered an alarm only I could hear. Back at the bank, the day started normally. Then the first reports trickled in. A few wire transfers timed out. ATMs were sluggish. Finch was dismissive. Legacy clutter, he announced. Find the bugs and squash them. But there were no bugs. The system wasn't broken. It just wasn't working. By 10 a.m., thousands of ATMs were offline. By 11 a.m., the online banking portal went dark. The $19 billion a day machine had ground to a halt. Now I know what you're thinking. This whole scenario sounds impossible. No Real bank would let one person be the sole gatekeeper of its entire infrastructure. And you're right. In the real world, this would be forbidden. Regulators like the Federal Reserve demand robust disaster recovery and succession plans to prevent any single point of failure. On top of that, laws like ERISA provide federal protections for vested pension plans, meaning a company can't just fire you the day before retirement to steal your pension. But this story is a cautionary tale for a reason. It explores the terrifying gap between what's supposed to happen and what can happen when years of arrogance let standards slip. The bank saw the core of the Citadel as a black box that just worked, and they never bothered to truly look inside. Finch was betting on me being too tired and intimidated to fight a legal battle. He was betting on my silence. By 2 p.m., the war room was a pressure cooker. Finch's A-team was hopelessly lost. They finally traced the problem to encrypted authentication modules deep within the COBOL mainframe. Modules only I had ever touched. They found the Sentinel protocol, but it was unbreakable without the cryptographic keys, which were on a physical token currently sitting in a drawer in my apartment. The realization dawned on them. The system wasn't broken. It was waiting. A junior developer, pale and trembling, finally said it. It's not a bug. It's a feature. We can't fix it. Only she can. Chaos had reached the 40th floor. The CEO, Robert Harrison, was facing a crisis of unimaginable proportions. The bank was losing hundreds of millions of dollars an hour, and they had just escorted the only person on earth who could fix it out of the building. While the bank was imploding, I was having a rather nice afternoon. I visited a museum. I bought a ridiculously expensive bottle of wine. My phone was off. I knew they'd come. It was just a matter of when. At 7 p.m., a sleek Blacktown car pulled up. Out stepped the CEO, Robert Harrison, his face a mask of panic, and behind him, Davis Finch, who looked like a man walking to his own execution. A few moments later, there was a soft knock on my door. "Eleanor," Harrison began, his voice strained. "We have a situation." I raised an eyebrow. "We?" "I don't think there's a we anymore, Robert. I was made redundant, remember?" "Please," Harrison pleaded, "we need your help. The network is down." "The Sentinel Protocol," I said calmly. "It's an integrity fail-safe. It appears to be working perfectly." Finch finally looked up. "You sabotaged us. This is illegal." I laughed a cold, sharp sound. "Davis, the Sentinel Protocol hasn't damaged a single byte of data. It did exactly what it was built to do. Protect the bank from a compromised command structure. In this case," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "the compromise was you. Eleanor, what will it take?" Harrison cut in. "A consulting fee. Name your price." This was the moment. "There's nothing to fix," I replied, swirling my wine. "The system is waiting for the retirement handshake, a ceremony that was canceled." The color drained from Harrison's face. He understood. This wasn't a technical problem. It was a human one. "Let's be clear," I said, my voice low and deliberate. "This is a settlement negotiation, and my price is not negotiable." I laid out my terms. 1. My full pension, which you tried to steal, will be paid out immediately, as a single, lump sum wire transfer. To that, you will add a 7-figure severance payment. Let's call it 7 times your annual bonus last year, Robert. Harrison flinched. 2. The bank will issue a formal, public apology to me, printed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, stating my termination was an error. "That's impossible," he sputtered. 3. I cut him off. "Davis Finch is to be fired. For cause, gross mismanagement resulting in catastrophic financial losses. This will be announced in the same press release as my apology." Finch made a choked, sobbing sound. "And finally," I said, "once those 3 conditions are met, the money is in my account, the apology is sent to the Journal, and I have confirmation of Finch's termination. I will complete the handshake. From my laptop. Right here. You have 1 hour." I closed the door. I could hear Harrison's muffled shouting from the hallway as he convened an emergency board meeting over the phone. 58 minutes later, my laptop pinged. A wire transfer confirmation. The amount was staggering. Then an email arrived with a PDF of the press release, detailing my apology and Finch's termination. I opened the door. Harrison stood there alone. "It's done," he whispered. I nodded, sat down in my armchair, and plugged in the small crypto key. On my screen, a simple box appeared. Retirement handshake sequence initiated. Awaiting final confirmation. I savored the moment. The silence. The power. Then, with a quiet click, I pressed confirm. Across the city, the Citadel woke up. The lockdown was released. The heart of the bank began to beat again. "It's done," I said. "Now, if you don't mind, I have a retirement to begin." I closed the door on his face for the final time. What would you have done in Eleanor's position? When faced with that kind of betrayal, would you have chosen silence, or would you have built your own form of justice? So many of us have felt undervalued at our jobs. Have you ever wished you held the keys to the whole kingdom, just for a day? Share your story or what you would have done in the comments below. In the aftermath, Sterling Global Trust was never the same. The public apology and firing of their star CTO created a firestorm. Robert Harrison resigned a few weeks later. The bank's stock recovered, but its reputation was permanently stained. This fictional tale became a powerful example of the immense risks of undervaluing the quiet, institutional knowledge that holds companies together. The story shines a spotlight on a reality many in the tech world already know. Critical, modern infrastructure often still relies on legacy systems like COBOL. These systems are the bedrock of global finance, and the people who understand their secrets are a dwindling, invaluable resource. The legend of Eleanor Vance is a wake-up call for an entire industry. And as for me, Eleanor, I finished my glass of wine. The next day, I booked a one-way ticket to Florence. I spent the next year learning to paint and drinking wine in the Tuscan sun. I didn't take revenge in a fit of anger. I simply let the system they disrespected follow its own logic. My victory wasn't in crashing the bank. It was in the quiet, dignified act of holding them accountable. It was a reminder that true power isn't about shouting in a boardroom. It's about knowing your value and, when necessary, knowing exactly which key to turn.